The recording will mainly happen so that we can keep it um, in the Beta archives, right? Just like most symposium workshops and panels. So to start, first of all, I would like to ask the guest speakers to introduce themselves, talk about what they did before, their credentials, what they would like to bring to the panel. So let's start with the director of the Beta think tank, Andrea. So please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you in a very good number. I say it's this is one of my favorite panels, not necessarily because I'm part of it, but it's because of the topic. I have been attending MEUs for quite some time, and content has always been my favorite. As I've been head of content, I've had different roles as commissioner, legal advisor, or chairperson. And for a couple of months, I've taken the role of director of Beta Europe think tank, which is going to work mainly on this, the concept of MEUs, and also focus on content. Besides that, I'm a PhD student in international trade law, and I'm also a policy officer at the Northeast Regional Development Agency from Romania, situated with the office in Brussels. So if you ever are in Brussels, just give me a call. We can talk, and I'm open for discussions.
Great then. Thank you, Andrea. Now, now the now let Nick, the president of Beta Czech Republic and the previous president of Beta Europe. Nick, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me, Ziad and Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. To see many familiar faces, both from the current Beta, but also from what Beta used to be a few years ago. So the attendance tonight is quite fantastic. As Ziad said, I'm currently president of Beta Czech Republic, and I was president of Beta Europe as SBL, the inaugural president. I have been always very passionate by content, sharing, legal advising, the work of the commissioners. So no matter in what capacity I was organizing a project, this work has always been very close to my heart. So I'm really happy that I can speak on that behalf here. I have most recently organized the first MEU online, which took place under the auspices of Beta Slovakia. MEU Bratislava online, which turned out to be a great success. And there is a specific panel about that as well. So very happy to be here.
Thank you, Nick. Now the turn goes for Ariadna. I had the pleasure to meet Ariadna in MEU Lisbon, where she was a chair, and I was a commissioner.
And I think a lot of people here know how that turned out. Thank you, Ziad. So I'm Ariadna. I'm currently studying politics, philosophy, and law at King's College London. And I've been doing MUNs and MUs since 2014, I think, but I could also say since longer than I can remember. And I've had the pleasure of being a participant a lot of times, and also chairing and being part of various content teams. And it's my great pleasure to be on this panel tonight and to be able to be part of this, I'm sure, wonderful discussion. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
Well, thank you, Ariadna. And last but not least, Giuliano, which I also had the pleasure to start my MU journey in the same conference as his first international MEU Strasbourg 2018, I think. And I also had the pleasure to work with him in MEU Lisbon. He made by far the most detailed and extensive content um, guides for my topic, the election of the of the European Commission president. So, Giuliano, please.
Well, thank you very much, Ziad. I can just say the same. It was a pleasure working with you with all these years. So my name is Giuliano. I've been a member of Peace of Portugal for a couple of years, since 2018. And just as Ariadna, I've been doing MEUs and MEUNs. MEUs more recently, but MEUNs since my first year of high school. I've always been engaged in simulations. And after I started making part of organizing teams here in MEUs, I've always been a part of content teams. This is the part that I enjoy the most doing, like researching a new topic and making topics more appeasing, more appeasing to new people so they can learn something. This is the part that I enjoy the most. I'm really happy to see, as all you said, such familiar faces to see again, rather online. I'm really excited for this conference. So that's it.
Giuliano, are you still with us? Can you hear us?
No, yes, I just stopped speaking. I was done.
Oh, okay, that's great. I thought that there was an internet connection problem. So, so let's start with the topics. And so, just a disclaimer: there will be three parts to this panel. First of all, we will talk about the basics of content organization. Then we'll talk about the main debates and content related issues between the different teams. And finally, we will talk about the future developments and potential improvements in that field. So just another disclaimer: usually we open questions for the public by the end of the panel, but this time I took the decision of opening the discussion when we talk about each one of the different topics, because I think that this way your thoughts will be a little bit more fresh. You will have the opportunity to intervene more interactively. So as soon as some of the speakers will end speaking, please do not hesitate to raise your hand and I will probably give you the floor. So let's start with the first part and talk about the choice of topics. And this is great because we have the opportunity of having many heads of contents and director generals in our panel. So let's start with Andreea. Andreea, what do you think are the best criteria to take into account when you want to choose topics for the MEU?
Well, first of all, it depends a lot from MEU to MEU and where they're situated. For example, I've done MEUs in Romania, as I've organized the first MEU there, MEU Iași. And every time when we discussed which topic we should address, we thought of which is the most important thing for Romania that is being discussed at European level. For example, that 2 years ago, it was the EPO regulation, the European Public Prosecutor's Office. And of course, because it was very relevant for Romania, given the fact that the first EPO, the first chief prosecutor is a Romanian woman, then of course, we decided to discuss that. Of course, you should always have into consideration which are the main topics discussed at the European Union level, because you would like to have in your MEU the best topics, the most current discussions, and to have everyone engaged. Otherwise, participants are going to be either bored or they are not going to know exactly too much how to add information, how to debate, how to get engaged with the topic, and they might not have an opinion. Also, it shouldn't be too technical, as this is a very big problem. MEUers are never only legal or lawyers or law students or politicians or politics students. No, they come from all over the backgrounds, all over the domains. So you need to find something that is relatable, something that is easy to understand, and of course you need to find the best version when it comes to the proposal. And that's another topic, is because topic is one thing, but then is how do you put it on paper? So let's say that, for example, you have a very good topic, but the proposal you found on the official pages of the European institutions are very complex. And of course, not all of the participants have a legal background. Therefore, you will need to work on the proposal and try to adapt it so it can be accessible. So I think these are the main criteria, at least from my perspective. But I believe that it also depends on the vision of the director general or the project manager or those that are organizing and how they want to educate the participants further.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea, for this input. So you talked about the importance of it being relevant for participants. So I'd like to take it from here and ask Nick about your experience in that field. More precisely, what topics do you think would usually spark the interest of participants more than others? Is there any special kind of topics that future organizers should look into more than others?
Well, thank you very much, Ziad. And I must say that I completely agree with Andrea when it comes to organizing a conference aiming largely or primarily at domestic participants. It is very important to look at the topics which are discussed domestically. So for me, being the president of the Czech Republic here, in the Czech Republic right now, we discuss a lot the next multi-annual financial framework. We do discuss a lot, generally speaking, any topic from the area of freedom, security, and justice. So I would say that it is important to, on the one hand, have a look at the topics which are important on the national agenda, and on the other hand, to focus on the topics which are also important for Europe as a whole. Especially this relates to larger conferences which transcends usually countries or regions. And that being said, I believe that the choice of topic is also relevant for fundraising, because at the end of the day, the more funds can be gathered, the more accessible the conference can be, and the larger amount of young professional students can be attracted. And with this, I think it is also important to identify the funding opportunities, both at the European level and the national or potential regional level, see what their priorities are, and then also do some kind of a test of the topics identified against the priorities and see to what extent they're compatible.
Okay, that's great. That's great input. Thank you. So now I will open the floor to the public if anyone wants to have their input or say something. Seeing nobody raising their hands, I will go to the other category, which is the content guide. Obviously, the content guide is a very tricky part of the conference. As we all know, it's always hard to explain to new participants what the topics are all about. So I wanted to ask Giuliano, which I really admired his content presentation. I wanted to ask you, what, in your opinion, makes a good content guide, and how long should a content guide be?
Well, first of all, a good content guide needs to perform the role of the content guide. Is that The content guide should contain all the relevant information that the participant needs to fully take part in the debate. This is to say that if the participant reads the content guide, makes some notes, and compares it to the proposal, he or she should be able to fully participate in the debates and discussions and so on. Nevertheless, this is the difficult because, okay, we can write a 40, 50 pages long content guide for each proposal. Therefore, no one will read because everyone, like almost all the participants are students, they are university students, and some of them even work while study, and they might not have the time to read it, to prepare, really read this 50 page long content guide. So for me, the balance is trying to find all the relevant information in the smallest size possible. And this is rather subjective, but I usually see that 15 pages long for each guides, with some up to 30 pages to read in total, plus the proposal, is a very good size. And in these 15 pages should include both the background information, the analysis of the proposal, and the position itself from the member states and the EP groups.
Okay, well, that's a great input. Well, in my case, for me, what I always saw as most important is actually the positions of different countries, because this allows the participants to map out pretty much the proposal in a very unique way. That way they know exactly where they are, where other people are. And what I used usually is to add on or like precise what exactly are the controversial articles, so that they come to the conference with already, maybe not exactly amendments. We always ask participants to have amendments prepared, but in my experience, it never happened. What mostly happens is that at least they had an idea of what amendments they should work on in what articles. So if anyone wants to add anything here, because I'm seeing many people that I had the chance to read content guides that they made. So anyone wants to jump in? Okay, then great. Now let's go to the third category, which is about the rules of procedure. So and here I will ask Andreea about it. To be honest, I'm not that much familiar with rules of procedure. I never chaired, but from what I know, Andreea chaired many times, so did Nick, so did Ariadna. And so let's start with Andreea and ask her, from your personal experience, how different are rules of procedures from each other, from each conference?
Well, from what I've noticed, until last year, most MEUs have been using the same rules of procedure, very similar to those from MEU Strasbourg. Because MEU Strasbourg for a while has been the most famous conference out there. So of course, everyone who wanted to get inspired, they took the rules from there. It was a lot easier. But I have to say that the rules of procedure that used to be before MEU Strasbourg passed them to other MEUs, and until last year have been quite complex and very difficult to understand and read, mostly by those participants that are maybe not really acquainted with legal knowledge or legal vocabulary. And that's why, for example, in MEU Yash, we started something different. We wanted to have the rules of procedure more closer to the real procedure of the institutions. Because again, it might be a simulation, but it doesn't mean that you have to adapt pretty much everything. There are a couple of rules that can still be implemented in a smaller scale as well. For example, and I've noticed that this way of thinking has been adopted also by MEU Lisbon, MEU Bratislava, and other MEUs that are going to be organized from now on or have been organized digitally in the past months. For example, also at in the think tank, we are working on a of rules of procedure, which are, yes, from Yash, but we are trying to improve because we believe that it's always room for improvement, and we can try to deliver the best. Because after all, if we don't give the participants a set of rules which is easy to understand and it's not very conflictual, then it's going to create some sort of frustration with them, and that is going to look bad also on the event. I mean, sure, everyone enjoys a good discussion with the chair on the rules of procedure, and to try to catch them in a corner, to put them in a corner with just one rule that they have overseen. But sometimes it can be quite difficult and frustrating for the rest. So it's better to create this environment where they have the right rules and the right place to talk, but in a way that reflects the reality. So of course, again, this is up to each MEU, but it would be very good to see that there is some sort of unity as participants jump from one MEU to another, and they are going to see these differences. So of course, this is something that has to be worked on, but I would always militate for more realistic set of rules of procedures. Those reflect the reality and the institutions, and they would provide exactly why the participants go to MEUs to learn about the European Union. Otherwise, it's just another project like any other.
Okay, thank you very much for your input. So I want to jump in after that to Nick, because Nick, in your conference in MEU Bratislava, well, where you were head of content, you took the decision of using this new rules of procedure. So I just wanted to know if you noticed any major difference, and if you did, how did it impact the conference?
Well, thank you very much, Ziad. I must say that I yet again agree with what Andreea said, and I think it is quite formidable that she managed to make MEU Yash and its content sort of the reference for other conferences right now. So for us at Bratislava, there were two primary reasons. One of them, it was simply that many of the organizers from the successful edition of MEU Yash also happened to be part of the MEU Bratislava team. So for us, it was a natural choice, considering that we had already been familiarized with them. We had worked with them at Yash, and we only needed to adapt them to the digital environment where MEU Bratislava took place. But at the same time, I would say that most of the participants of MEU Bratislava, with very few exceptions, they were first-timers. And even though that the conference took place in an online environment, we never really noticed any problem when it came to the rules of procedure and their interpretation. We are, of course, lucky that the chairs that we had chosen, they were always helpful to the participants. And I think that's a very important point in general, because as Giuliana was speaking before about the content guide and how important it is to make it digestible for the participants, I would say something similar comes also to the rules of procedure. But especially before, in the traditional environment where participants used to travel to conferences, it's already quite a commitment to successfully apply, register, commit to. And I don't think that if someone is not adequately prepared when it comes to the rules of procedure, I don't think they should feel ostracized during the conference. So here, chairs do play a very important role in terms of identifying any inconsistencies procedure and then gently guiding the participants into the correct use.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Now let's jump into Ariadna, because Ariadna emphasized that her participation to MEUNs, chairing in MEUNs, just as much as she chaired in MEUs. So having this comparative experience, can you tell us what are the main differences between the rules of procedures, and maybe which one you'd prefer, why?
Yeah, thanks, Ziad. So yeah, there are obviously a lot of differences between MUNs and MEUs in terms of rules of procedure. I think we've moved away from that a lot in the past few years. When I started going to MEUs, the rules seemed a little bit similar, obviously apart from the ordinary legislative procedure, which is of course very different. But we used to use terms like delegate and caucus and stuff like that, which is not something that you would ever see used in the actual European Union, but is something that is used normally and comes from the world of MUNs. So the way I saw this, the way I first understood the rules of procedure in MEUs when I first started to read them was, okay, someone looked at MUNs who obviously have a much longer tradition and thought, okay, let's take this and adapt it to what we're doing here with MEUs. And I honestly think that with MEUs, the rules of procedure are like a live organism. They keep changing edition to edition and from simulation to simulation. Like as Nick and Andrea were talking about the rules at Yash, which are very different from, I don't know, the rules at Brussels 3 years ago, you know, and it's just 3 years, you know, you would expect them to be relatively the same, but they're not. And speaking as, you know, having been part of a bunch of content teams, I know that rules are always tweaked. There's always like that little bit that you can change here and that little bit that you can change there, and you can like make it a little bit easier to understand and make it a little bit true to form. And that's, I think, the biggest difference from MUNs, because MUNs, they have 3 types of rules of procedure, let alone they have 3 different types of rules of procedure. And then they're the same, and they've been the same for decades, and no one ever dares touch them. And I think that's a big mistake, because we grow and we learn and more people join us in this wonderful community, and you get to go and study and look at the actual rules in real life, and you really have to bring that into what you're doing. You have to bring it into an MEU, and that's how you make it more realistic and closer to how it actually is.
Thank you very much, Ariadna. So now let's jump into our last category in the part 1, our last topic in part 1, which is about the selection of commissioners and chairs, which is, I'm sorry, I think that someone raised their hand, Federico.
Yes, I have a question. In the MEU Iasi and Bratislava, with the new rules, was allowed the cross-talking?
I'm sorry?
Or in some percentage?
Who was the question directed to?
Talking shouldn't be allowed anywhere because it is disruptive. And after all, we would like to still have a structured dialogue in a way that is more productive for the participants, for the topic, and for the event itself. But of course, you know, we cannot cross out from the general tradition of passing notes. That can still take place, but definitely not cross-talking. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an MEU. It would be just, I don't know, a gathering of people talking about everything but the topic itself. And we would like to, you know, we have that only for social events or for other events which are not necessarily related to the topic that we choose at MEUs.
Okay, then let's go back to the selection process. So for commissioners and chairs. So let's start with Nick. I wanted to know about your favorite methodology to select commissioners and chairs, and what, in your opinion, makes a good commissioner or chair.
Well, thank you very much, Ziad. I would say that when you think of the usual roles the content team has in order to implement a successful MEU, the chair, the commissioner, and the legal advisor, they're relatively different qualities that you would expect from each. When it comes to chairs, I would say that it is primarily the idea that they will be moderating, they will be guiding the participants, but they shouldn't necessarily steal the spotlight from the participants. They should be merely facilitating the discussion. And I think that is really important, so that on the one hand, they can correct effectively any mistakes that participants make, but on the other hand, they can do so in a way that wouldn't embarrass the participant, or the participants in general would think that it is absolutely normal to make mistakes, and we're here to learn, and we have learned, and we move on. So I would say that, of course, prior experience is always important. But then again, successful chair can be also a participant who has attended a few times, and just by mastering the rules of procedure and having the attitude of sort of being a constructive actor during the simulation, they can make an outstanding chair. When it comes to commissioners, I would say that here, what is even more important than in the case of the chairs, it is the personal charisma, the personal touch with the participants, very much the passion for the topic, if it has been already selected. You need someone who ideally feels personally attached to the agenda. It is always easier if you can select the commissioner first, and then they can actually name 2 or 3 areas which they particularly enjoy, and ideally it meets with the expectations of your conference for topics. But if it doesn't, it's really important that the commissioner in question, that they actually like the topic, and they can really master even the tiniest details and nuances of what they will be defending in front of the participants. And last but not least, when it comes to the legal advisors, I would say that here what is very important is the passion for law, for European Union law, but at the same time the understanding that most participants are not lawyers. So, you know, again, have a similar approach to the chairs in terms of explaining, gently guiding the participants, but letting the participants being the masters of the simulation with their ideas, and then merely facilitating the ideas that the participants have with their legal expertise.
Thank you very much, Nick. Now I'll give the floor to Ariadna. Back to chairing. What, in your opinion, makes a good chair?
So in terms of, first of all, with commissioners and legal advisors, I do agree with Nick, but with chairs, I think it's a little bit more complex than that. And for me, I think there's always 2 types of chairpersons that you have, obviously, because you'll have 3 chairpersons probably for each institution. It's quite a big team. So I would say there's 2 choices that you need to make. The first would be the more senior chair, so your president, maybe vice president, where you have to look at their CVs, you have to look at their style of chairing, and most importantly, I think, and I don't think a lot of people really take this into account, you have to look at references. You have to see actually genuinely, for people who are there being chaired by them or coordinating them in terms of content team, you have to see what they're like. You have to, you know, you have to like marry them nicely. You put a, you know, very strict chair with someone that's a little bit more charismatic and more fun, and you like all together they have to be a very diverse team. You can't have 3 very strict chairs, that's it, end of the day, because you might as well just have one. And on the other hand, your second decision is for, again, your like the newbies. You always have to try to get some people who haven't done this before under the wings of some more experienced chairpersons, and let the more experienced ones teach them. And when you choose your newbies, so to speak, you have to look at their experience, sure, but you have to look at their personality. you have to choose someone who understands that there's a learning curve with the job, and you're probably not going to do a very, very good job the first time around, but you have to listen. You have to be able to do the background work, which is very, very, very important, like keeping time and, the voting procedure and everything, very important. But you also have to choose someone who will have the guts to step up and be like, okay, I'm going to be chairing for this hour of the simulation. I'm sure I can do this. I will try. I will do my best. And someone who's fine with taking feedback and giving feedback, obviously. Someone who's fine with saying, okay, I want to know how I did. I want to do better next time. Where can I improve? And I think that's really, really, really important.
Thank you very much, Ariadna. So while you were talking, Finley asked a question, which is mainly about the importance of the personal dynamics between the different organizing officers, and how important it is for the conference and to create a welcoming environment for the participants. So if anyone wants to join here from the panel.
I would like to answer to this, as I've actually been put in this kind of situations when selecting chairs quite recently, I might add. It depends a lot on what you want to do with the conference and what you want to underline. For example, in Yash, I've always wanted to make it as an example for the participants, given the fact that most of them have been coming from Romania and maybe they didn't necessarily have the possibility to go to other conferences outside, because some of them are quite expensive to attend. So I've wanted to bring closer some role models, some people they can get inspiration from or motivation. Therefore, sure, I actually completely agree with what Nick and Ariadna mentioned when selecting chairs, legal advisors, commissioners. But I've also took into consideration what they can provide for the MEU itself. So maybe I might have heard, for example, that two people don't necessarily like each other, but when you put together, they make such an amazing team. And this is something that you still have to have into consideration. What's very important when you select these people to be part of the content team is actually professionalism. If they are professional persons, they are going to put aside all the feelings and they're going to be there for the participants, and they're still going to collaborate. And the results are actually quite magnificent when you look at them. Therefore, I would say that it can be quite a handful. I'm not going to say it's not, but at the same time, the results are really good, and it provides an environment for the participants to actually benefit from so many other perspectives than just attending an MEU and getting a certificate at the end. So here it depends, but I would always like to have people who are really involved. So I take a look at these kind of traits in their personalities to see how they are with the participants. As for example, I would like to have a chair who has this feeling that when he's chairing, he's the king of the world. I've seen this kind of people in real life, and I've seen how it can affect the participants and how people are leaving frustrated because either they can't say anything or they cannot get involved because there is a tyrannical chair who's there trying to stop them and trying to take the floor all the time simply because they like to hear their voices. Well, I would like to not have that, but I would prefer to have people who don't necessarily like each other, but they were great and they are amazing with the rest of the participants and the rest of the team. So it depends a lot from person to person.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea. I completely agree, and I would have loved if we continue talking on this topic. It obviously raises the interest of many people, but unfortunately, we'll have to go on for time restraints, and we go to the second part of this panel, which is mainly about the opinions and debates on content-related issues. And we'll start with Ariadna again, because this question is about the main differences between MEUs and MUNs on every level, and maybe what we would have to learn from MUNs and maybe what MUNs would have to learn from us. So Ariadna,
Thank
please.
you, Ziad. Well, first of all, I think most people here know that MUNs have many, many decades of experience on us. If I'm not mistaken, the first MUN was it took place in 1954 or something like that. So a long, long time, long tradition. Lots of different traditions actually throughout the world. There's different MUNs, whether you go to the US or Europe or Eastern Asia and so on and so long. And I do think that we can learn a lot from them. I mean, okay, there is a stuffiness to them. They're always like, ooh, you go into an MUN. It's so sort of like that sort of like importance that they get because they have such a long tradition. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. I mean, I kind of have the feeling that participants take MUNs a lot more seriously than they take MEUs. And I've tried for a very long time to understand why that is and find out the reason for it. But I don't know, the best answer I could come up with is maybe it's the prizes. MUNs always have prizes. And I know this is a very taboo topic for MEUs. We don't like to talk about it. We've abolished prizes probably like 4 or 5 years ago everywhere. We don't want to talk about it anymore. But I do think there's sort of like, when there's something to fight for, you have a competitive sort of attitude, and in my experience at least, you're more likely to actually maybe put a little bit more work in or be a little bit more focused, you know, and I think that could really help us. But then you don't want to fall in the other direction where you've got, you know, 5 participants who are very, very experienced, and then everyone else is first timers, and they're totally walking over the first timers, and the first timers are very, very intimidated. They don't even want to speak up anymore. So that's why I think, for instance, that another very good idea that we can steal from the MUN playbook is having institutions for beginners and institutions for more advanced participants. And then you'd allow the beginners to actually have a place where it's a safe space. They can open up, they can take time to understand the rules and everything, which is so important for their self-confidence and everything. And then you can have institutions for more advanced participants with a little bit of experience who really want to go in and have a fight and have a discussion and really try out what they've learned since the last simulation and really go, you know, head to head with all the other participants. And I think that, you know, again, very taboo topic to like divide people like that. But I think there are I think it's an idea that's worth considering for sure. And it works very well for MUNs. Why would it not work for us? And now, on the other hand, you know, the thing is that MUNs and MEUs are very, very different. They've always been so, even though they're the same idea. And I think one of the problems is we're very isolated from each other. It's not very often that you see someone who's done MUNs and MEUs. And I don't see why that would be so, because again, they're very, very similar ideas. So why wouldn't we, you know, have different institutions or have collaborations with MUNs, or actually genuinely build a bridge between us and them and try to learn from each other? Because I do think that would benefit both types of conferences greatly. Thank you, Ziad.
Okay, then, thank you very much. That's a very interesting take. So first of all, I'm gonna give the floor to Giuliano, and then we're gonna discuss a proposition from Ivo, which is about giving prizes to both juniors and seniors. But before that, after Giuliano, I'm gonna also give my take here, because I think that I also have very strong opinions on that. So.
Oh, thank you, Ziad. Well, I can say that first discuss the difference between MEUs and MUNs. When I first participated in MEU, was a rather small MEU in Portuguese here in Lisbon. The first difference that I saw was precisely what Ariadna told, is that they are less serious, because I was accustomed to MUNs, and they have a very strict rules in the quorum, so no cross-talking, no discussion with the chairs, no walkouts. So when I saw this for the first time, I was like confused. I was not sure if this was allowed to happen or if it was particular of this conference. But still, regarding the prizes, despite having this effect of being treated more seriously, the experience that I had precisely back in Brazil, which follows the US model, it gets way too serious. It's really easy to get a toxic environment, as well, like seniors walking over newbies. Sexism is not a rare thing to happen. So actually, because of these issues, there's been a discussion back there to abolish actually the prizes, because the figure of the prizes for some participants are so important, because they can put this on CV. They can afterwards apply to college with this award. So it gets an importance that goes way beyond the simulation for them, and actually sparks the worst behavior in them. And a second part of the question is that what can we learn from MUNs? Actually, before this, I spoke with some friends. Like most of my friends back there, they are from MUNs. They still participate. They still organize back there. And there are three things that we have in MUNs that we are not having in MEUs that I believe would be really interesting. There are first the figure of the resolution, the figure of the intervention. Maybe this one is specifically from Brazil, but I'm not sure. Maria, you can comment this afterwards. And the figure of the crisis scenario. The first one is that the figure of the resolution is really interesting, because the basis of the MEU is the ordinary legislative procedure, in which the participants only amend a pre-made text, a completed text. The figure of the resolution, in which participants, they actually compose the document, it sparks a lot more creativity. They have more freedom to do whatever they please, whatever makes more sense to them. This can be really useful. The part of the intervention, I don't know if much of you are acquainted with this, but basically we have there are the discussions, and then someone walks into the committee as a journalist, as a people directly affected, or as another government, and so on. He gives a speech and tries to interfere again in the debates. But this can go just from someone reading a speech, and for some more theatrical reasons, imagine that we are discussing a civil war somewhere. They put a person interpreting, role-playing this model of someone affected by this conflict, a very emotional speech to reach the participants. This is another, for me, very interesting. And this part of the intervention, they usually go hand to hand with the crisis scenario. Is that there is a special section that the participants do not know, in which there is a very urgent problem. Imagine again discussing things in the Security Council, a specific conflict. A part of the conflict is doing something they were not supposed to do, and then they have some specific time to deal with this issue. So mixing all these three concepts could be a really interesting thing to add to MEUs. So imagine there is a crisis situations. We can mix both intervention, can bring external actors into the debates. We can make the council, both parliament, for our resolutions separately or together. There is a space to this, and make and I forgot what I was going to say. They can write the resolution. They can participate, and the foreign actors can join. And there's this crisis scenarios that make participants get excited, get more blood in their veins, regarding not to solve a problem that is that requires time. They have only usually half an hour or one session. So these three concepts, when they're put together, they can bring an extra flavor to MEUs that MEUs do not have usually. They usually do not have.
Well, thank you very much, Giuliana, for your input. Well, personally, I'm actually really happy that there is this very interesting input. It's true that many people that participate in MEUNs aren't really from the MEU, in the MEU bubble. I'd argue that it's mainly because of budgetary reasons, which is a real concern when it comes to MEUNs. But besides it, and why I really oppose both, personally oppose both prices and classification of people according to the level, is mainly because, unlike MEUNs, our goal is mainly about education. And when it comes to education, I think that it's a lot better for participants to understand how messy the process uh, of the European Union is. Although there is all this laws and all this decision-making process, no one can deny that these novice members of parliament would not know as much European law and European decorum and stuff like that as much as European parliamentarians that have been there for decades. Same goes for ministers. So I think that it's very, very positive for participants to understand that, and to understand in some way that it's okay, which is why it's better not to have these prices, because they classify participants and they kind of put an additional pressure on them, which is not the moment, in my opinion. Because I know how pressuring it could be to first get into this room and see the tenors having their speeches and the commissioner coming, and it's not easy, and a prize won't help. At least that's my opinion. So if anyone wants to join in, because I've seen many raised hands. Okay, then we'll quickly jump in. Okay, yeah, Anis.
Since anyone just spoke, just make a last comment that I forgot to say.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Well, another difference that I perceived in change from MEUs from MEUs to MEUs, that the focus of the MEUs is in education, but not in the specific topics, but about the role of the EU itself, the importance of in the life of the daily citizens, what they do, and how can they improve their lives. While in MEUN, still there is this background of importance of international politics, international peace. Usually the focus of participating in MEUN goes more in the way of public speaking, rhetoric, and actually how to speak in public. So the focus of the learning experience is more on the individual rather than the function of the institution they're simulating. Of course, there's this component of MEU as well, but it was a thing that I really noticed right in my first MEU, is that there is this background meaning of this institution has power, it has influence. It is important for you both to learn how to speak properly in public, but as well to know what the work of this institution and how it can affect your life.
Okay, then, thank you very much. I'll give the floor now to Anis, that have been waiting for a while now.
Regarding the contents, well, it might be helpful to regarding some my experience in MEU. So what I like in this type of MEU and what I don't like. So for example, there is the time for submitting some amendments. So usually it's not so enough for participants so to have that 2 hours or 3 hours just to submit some amendments. So proposals. The second one is the conflicts and the misunderstandings so between participants. So I myself, since I started the first MEU, I act my role as a minister or part of the council or the parliament. So as I am from that country, so that means that of course, I cannot be the same one as the representative of that country, so in the council or in the parliament, but I try just to know the external relations and everything about that country and use that so in the council. For example, there are participants that come with respect to everyone from different countries. They start to talk about words like sanction, words like, for example, terrible, words of discrimination that has never been used so in Europe. So if you look and flick through the dictionary of MEU, you cannot find them. Also, the quality of chairs, and with respect to everyone, there are really chairs that are very good, very friendly, presidents of the council, vice presidents, secretary, with participants and between each other. And there are chairs that come, it's like I am a chair and it's you are participants. There are chairs that don't know what's going on. So in the proposal, they don't know anything. So it's like they chair, and of course they follow just the rules, and that's all. That makes a big misunderstanding for participants, and it's like those chairs, they don't even help the situation. The informal discussion in the breaks or when they are out, so with participants. So we can say that they are not friendly. The quality of chairs, some chairs that I have dealt with, was really not acceptable for me. While other chairs, while for example, when we were in Italy together, you and I, so Ziad, it was amazing there. Of course, I would like to comment another point. So regarding of content proposal and regulation. Yes, there are commissioners. For example, when we summon the commissioner, I'm talking in general. There are some commissioners that come just they read the position paper. They read what they wrote there. On their Microsoft Word, and of course they don't say anything else. It's like when you summon just to know the opinion, if it's helpful or not, they don't say anything. Of course, in one of the MEUs, I don't want to say the name, but it's like there were acting chairs, and of course, we're acting the roles of other countries. This was really, I may use the word bad, because when they were voting, it's like when they were against the thing, they were just helping the proposal to pass. Of course, we are here to learn, we are here to solve issues. If we don't discuss the mistakes, we cannot develop proposals and find solutions for the future. We are youth, we are a new generation. So this is our main goal here. This is the question why some chairs, they start to do like that. We can allow the amendments and the proposal to pass, and we cannot allow the amendment and the proposal to pass if it doesn't meet the commitments of the European Union in general, because we are here just to find solutions for that. Of course, I cannot talk about the qualification regarding participants and chairs, because there are people that have master's degree, bachelor's degree, backgrounds in politics, background in scientific. I myself, I am scientific. I studied also international relation, but I have never said anything regarding that. It's like I try to practice and I try to enjoy MEU. The final point that I would like really to suggest to be in all MEUs and maybe Beta Europe, it's please to have like a press conference where participants and where chairs explain everything they did at the end or at the closing ceremony. For example, I acted as a minister or acted like an MEP. What I did, please don't hate me. Don't, for example, I was just acting like that. This is just my role. It's like when we are in a movie and when we are in a film. There are evil artists, good artists, they are beautiful and not beautiful. So after that, they make a press conference where they say, I am not like that, just I was acting the role. I faced this situation, but from MEU in general, I have got really best friends and good friends that are very, very good, and we are still in contact. I hope you guys that you understood my opinion, and that I hope that it will be helpful next time. And if I chair, I promise you that I will do a good job with the team. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Anis. And well, this topic took a lot longer than expected. Yet the goal of this category was actually to have these debates. So I'm gonna consider this as something positive. However, I will only have the time for one more speaker. this is why I will give Nick back the floor. Nick, please.
Thank you very much, Ziad. And I would like to thank Anis for his feedback, because I really think that, you know, it is very important for us as the organizers to have this lesson to word moment. And even though that these feedback sessions are organized after the conference, you know, quite a few of the issues mentioned, they concern several conferences, not necessarily one. And I think that this is just the perfect forum to bring it all on the table. So I'm very thankful. Thank you so much. Now, regarding the amendment deadline, which Anis first mentioned, I would say that's really quite a problem that many MEUs, they run on a very tight schedule, and that to participants who have come prepared and enthusiastic about the project, it can be a bit demotivating, that they feel that they're sort of fighting against the time virtually during the whole conference. What we did at MEU Bratislava is that by having the conference take place during one whole week, where we had it during 4 subsequent weekends, one of the luxuries that we could afford was also to have several days for working on amendments, and then maybe 2 extra days for the legal advisors to provide feedback to the participants. So I would say that when it comes to the digital environment, which is the predominant environment right now, this issue can be addressed a lot easier. We have to think how to do it when we return to regular physical conference. When it comes to the conflict, especially in the council between member states, because I usually tend to chair the council, I have seen it quite a few times that sometimes, especially the representatives of Poland and Hungary, but also sometimes the other representatives around them as well, that they sort of take this, you know, potential perceived conflict, which there is to some extent at the European level, a bit too far. So maybe except for Jean-Claude Juncker and you know, his categorizations at some European council summits after a few glasses of wine, I wouldn't say that, you know, anyone from the EU would call their colleagues dictators, or they would use such strong words, or they would, for that matter, treat them any differently. So I usually try to have a laugh about it, but of course it is something to be kept in mind, and this is definitely not how it works in reality. When it comes to chairs, I think this is primarily a point for the content teams who do the chair selection, because here I told you my vision and what you said is not compatible with my vision. So I would sort of not choose such a person for the conferences where I'm responsible for. But then I would say that even if, you know, this unfortunate choice has been already made, and if the participants feel that they're not getting a good sort of return on them participating in the MEU, I would always advise to go to one of the more senior organizers, be the head of content, be it one of the DGs during the conference, and explaining diplomatically that, for example, the chairs not being friendly, it is visible they're not prepared, so that, you know, you can already have a better feeling during the conference, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to the participants enjoying the conference. The same goes for the commissioners. Again, I would say feedback during the conference, be it if you want to try with the commissioner directly to them on the site, or if you don't feel comfortable, to one of the supervisors. And the last bit about the chairs voting, I would say, and I think Ziad has prepared this particular topic to be discussed, that it is important for sort of chairs, even when they're assigned to represent member states, to still take the back seat. On the one hand, to be authentic to the position which they're given, but on the other hand, still understand that the participants are the main driving force in the council, despite them despite them potentially playing a particularly important role on member state. So thank you so very much for this important feedback. I would say it's very important for all of us. It's very important for the Beta Euro think tank as the coordinating body of concept and content, and to definitely take it into account.
Thank you again very much, Nick. And let's jump into another interesting topic, which is mainly about the way we can deal with rogue participants. So here I wanted to know what's the different approaches of people on this panel when they will need to handle a participant that goes with some ridiculous or unrealistic proposals, such as invasions or stuff like that. What in the MEU universe we tend to call MUN stuff. So I wanted to know your different approaches to deal with it, and let's start with Andrea.
Well, it's very, how to say this? You can't actually change people's personalities, but you can try to help them see some sorts of educational part in this. Of course, when some participants go overboard, for example, and they take their role not necessarily too serious, it might be quite disruptive. Of course, you as a chairperson, for example, because the chair is usually the one that is in front of the participants, and it's quite usual that people tend to look up to them. They might have some sort of influence that they could try to talk to them and try to not to calm him down or hurt the participant itself, but to try to explain that this is a very it's a learning environment. I have to say that I have seen so many types of participants in my previous experiences, and yes, I've also met these kind of people that took things too seriously, and they felt also a bit frustrated with the fact that some other people didn't take the discussions too seriously. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that we should blame any side or another. It's just the way we manage to moderate the discussion itself. And this is going to be something that is up to the chairs. Of course, we should never, for example, impose some sort of sanctions regardless of how funny they are and how enjoyable they might be for the newspapers, for example, or for the gossip boxes if the MEUs decide to organize these kind of things. But it can have a very negative perspective later over the conference. Of course, again, this is up to the chairs and how they would like to have the situation itself. For example, regarding the most interesting proposals that you usually spice things up, sure, once it might be fine just to help the participants get into a discussion. Maybe if for example the day is a bit too slow, maybe they are still not into the roles yet and you would like to get them motivated to talk more, that can be helpful, but you need to know when to cross the line. So for example, you would work against having I don't know, the revival of the Roman Empire into a proposal. I've seen this kind of things, and it shouldn't be there. Otherwise, for example, when you work in two institutions at the same time as we do in MEUs, the other institution would feel very frustrated because they cannot pass in the end. They cannot vote in favor for the proposal, and after all, it's a lot of hard work. And everyone put so much passion into writing amendments, into the debate. And if we don't help them have a real positive result, then it might feel like it was all for nothing. At the same time, I would have to bring back the point that Anis mentioned with people going too much into the role and being called, I don't know, some sorts of dictators. I've seen this, and again, it's also how the participants have the roles allocated to. This is more of the work for the participants coordinator to see the potential, to see the value that the experience of those candidates can bring in a certain role, as it can have a great impact on the way the conference is going to be and how the debates are going to take place. For example, if you have a role which is usually more explosive, to say so, on a certain topic, then of course you cannot bring someone who is usually very quiet or quite modest. You would have to bring someone who would like to take on this challenge, as it is a challenge to commit to a role that usually, for example, is against some ideas, quite vocal about that. But also at the same time, all the participants should know that this is a simulation. Unfortunately, we cannot convince them sometimes, and they take things too personal. And here, I think it's also the organizing team's role to try to remind them constantly that everything that is being said during the simulation is for educational purposes, for getting engaged in this discussions, not to leave with the impression that someone has been attacked personally. I've seen it happen, but unfortunately, this is something that we cannot actually take into our hands to control, as we cannot control people, but we can definitely deal with educating them and showing them how it should be done. And most people are very open-minded about this. And I've seen, as I said, I've seen this kind of situations, and I've seen things having been resolved in a very normal conversation, and it went quite well in the end.
Okay, Andrea, thank you very much for this contribution. Oh, I see that Christina has a question. So how do you react? What do you do when a participant, as a minister who hasn't paid attention during the session, hasn't taken the floor, often decides as a joke to vote against the proposal? Who would be the person responsible for addressing the situation? Well, there was a similar case in MEU Lisbon also. It was a little bit more extreme. So when Minister just got rogue. So I wanted to see Giuliano's take on it as a content officer. How did you perceive it?
I see this type of behavior. For me, despite being seeing these in MEUs quite frequently, it's still for me rather odd, because I said the quorum in MEUs they're very strict. But I learned with time to separate this complete disruption from just a little cross-talking, a little questioning the calls of the chair. Okay, in some contexts, this is actually expected to happen. But when such a line is crossed, that either a specific participant feels really offended, and this has nothing to do with oh no, this is just his role playing. No, this is something that crossed the line and made this participant feel uncomfortable with participating in general. Or in the case that makes the whole audience, the whole council feel uncomfortable, make the whole parliament feel uncomfortable. This is a line that we should be really careful to watch. And if we see this happening, first of all, speak directly with the participant, but not precisely yet shaming him. Just saying, why are you doing this? Like, what is you have a goal with this? Because okay, maybe he's disrupting because he doesn't want the proposals passed, and this is the way he found to do this. But most of the time, it's going to try because, oh no, I thought it was funny. The committee was a little boring, so I thought it's going to be a little funny. Sort of a story he could tell afterwards to his friends, hanging friends. Oh, remember the time that I did these crazy things in the parliament? First, talk to him or her, and try to make these participants come to reason back again. You see, okay, you might think this is funny, but this is actually affecting the whole experience of the other participants, and how disruptive this can be. It's not serving anything else but your own enjoyment. This might be a little harsh, but this is my stance. To the point that we cross a line that makes all the participants feel sort of not okay with participating. They not only takes the experience with these participants, this but this may also stain the image of the MEU side, because this might be such an extreme event that this might stain the image of this particular MEU. This is going to be the MEU that this took place, and it's going to be horrible to happen to any MEU.
Well, thank you very much, Giuliano. So now we will go on to our very last question, where Ariadna will get to answer, and then all the other panelists will get to briefly have some concluding comments. So this question is about shortcomings and aspects to improve. So the question to Ariadna is, what aspects of the content in an MEU we should strive to improve, and how do you think this could be optimal?
Thank you, Ziad. So I think probably the biggest thing that we should try to improve, but at the same time, honestly, the most difficult thing to try to even change in any way, is trying to get people to get participants to be a little bit more involved before the actual simulation. You know, I've seen it a lot of times where, and it's heartbreaking, honestly, as a chairperson and as an organizer, to see all the participants roll out on the first day. They come to the workshops or the actual first day when they're supposed to be in the institutions, and they have these look in their eyes. They have no idea what's going on. They didn't realize that they maybe should have done a little bit of work beforehand. They maybe did or didn't go to the workshops on the rules of procedure, and there's just this whole, you can see that they're not doing very well, and I hate seeing that. I absolutely hate it. So I really do think it would be really, really important to get to engage them a little more. You know, I think a problem that I've seen a lot with a lot of MEUs is that the content guides get sent to the participants about a week or 2 weeks before. And I think in MEUs, for instance, it's a few months before, which I think is extreme as well. I think you really try to explain to them that, you know, it takes a little bit of work beforehand, and then you go there and you have a better idea of what's going on. And I think that's really, really important, because it really contributes to their, at least for the first timers, really contributes to their confidence when they first get there. And it really makes things go a lot smoother when they have just a little bit of a vague idea of what's going on. I also think that there's still a few things to be solved regarding rules of procedure. There's still, you know, some things that look very good on paper, but in reality often don't go very well. Stuff like the actual communication between the two institutions in terms of like participants, and actually explaining to them that they should have an idea of what's going on. They should go talk to people from the other institution on the breaks and at the socials and everything. And also there's the trialogues and the rapporteurs and stuff like that. Most of the time participants don't really know what they need to do. They get elected to do these things, and it's a little bit shady for them. They don't understand. They don't have the chairpersons there to hold their hand through it and explain it and everything. So they're kind of like sending them off on their own, which is, again, very intimidating. I really think we should work on that a little bit. But I think generally we should really applaud ourselves, because from the first MEU that I've done years ago to the last one that I've done in Yash last year, I've seen impressive growth. And I think we should always look back and think about the things that we have achieved, apart from looking at the things that are still to do. So I really think we should take a minute and be like, okay, we're doing great. We're actually progressing, we're changing, we're advancing, and that's absolutely wonderful.
Well, thank you very much, Ariadna. I'm pretty sure that everyone shares that spirit. And now, unfortunately, we'll have to go on with the concluding remarks. I've noticed that there's many topics that haven't been answered. Some people had wanted to ask a question, but unfortunately there's no more time. So please, let's start with Andreea.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I have to say that this panel has definitely brought up some very interesting topics that we should definitely deal with. I believe that there is room for improvement in MEUs, and I have to agree with Ariadna. We have to applaud ourselves because in over 10 years since we've attended or organized MEUs, we have come a long way, and with each MEU we gain more experience. What we have to do from now on is to actually take into consideration the feedback from the participants and to adapt and improve every single edition that we want to organize in all the MEUs that we are organizing anyway. And we have to make sure that it is the best possible event that we can offer to them, and we can offer that experience that they so badly need, and that they really deserve, an educational experience where they learn about the European Union, about how the European Union works, the politics, and everything behind the scenes. And it is our responsibility as MEU organizers to provide these kind of things. And thank you again for the talk today.
Thank you very much, Giuliano.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that this was an amazing panel. I was taking notes myself of all of you were speaking. It brought some great opinions on how we can improve these MEUs. It was great. I can only say this. It was a pleasure participating and seeing as well. I can share this feeling that Andrea shared. From the first MEUs, you can see that from each one we progress. Not only we personally progress, but the whole event, the whole family progresses. They improve both in size and in quality. And for me, this is just great to see.
Thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to Nick.
Thank you very much, Ziad. So thank you for you kindly moderating and sharing this panel today. I think that others will join me in saying that you did a fantastic job. But I would say that I was really delighted to see many new and old faces here at the panel. So this topic seems to be of great relevance, as it always has. And I'm really happy to see that under Andrea and also Ziad from the BTR think tank, that the issue receives the attention it deserves. For me, all the points which were raised by Anis were very important, and I would definitely keep them in mind when organizing future conferences. So thank you so much for that. And not only to Anis, but also to all of you, considering that you have taken your time to be here tonight to discuss content, just when you see the next application for an MEU, apply as a chair, apply as a commissioner, apply as a legal advisor, make use of the experience that you have already accumulated to actually bring your own ideas, how things should be done into the next MEU, be it digital or be it physical, hopefully next year already. So thank you so much, and a nice evening to all.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Ariadna.
Thanks. I just want to say that, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure being on this panel and bouncing ideas off of each other. And as Nick just said, can't wait to see you at actual MEUs. I've missed them so much.
I think we all did, especially me. So I thank everyone here for participating, obviously the speakers for taking the time to respond and to share their knowledge and experience. And so I thank all the participants for taking the time and being here. And thank you very much. I hope to see you in another panel, and very hopefully as soon as possible in a new MEU.